So Absolute Superman is forced to give up his last and final defense. In addition to this, Lois Lane begins to step into her version of the writer that we know her to be in the Prime Earth. And Ra's al Ghul is getting real close to making Superman his son. So when we pick back up on this right now, we're told by Lois Lane that 6 weeks ago, that Lazarus rolled its tanks down Main Street, past the empty storefronts, the 90-year-old feed store, and the Smallville Guild of Quilters. Attack helicopters swarm like flies at the state fairgrounds, toppling the year's prize butter sculptor of Amelia Earhart, a beloved Kansas native, and my own personal idol since I was 5. The Kansans stood their ground, armed to the teeth, like they did during the border wars of the 1850s, when it was Missouri bushwhackers and Confederate guerrillas come to sack their towns. They were farmers and the sons of salt miners, the daughters of free staters and Dodge City gunfighters. Ad astra per aspera went their state motto. Across 9 million light years rocketed alone from his exploded alien homeworld, his flesh sizzling with the power of a fallen star. Of course, he would find his way here, to these sun-drenched prairies and sunflower fields, ad astra per aspera, to the stars through difficulties. So began the Battle of Kansas. So we take a peek here from Lois's words, where we see Superman tell Sol that he needs Sol to use every crystal that he has to fortify Smallville. So Sol says, I can do this, but it will mean defying my primary objective as installed by your parents. It would mean leaving you without my protection while you're still weakened and recovering from your ordeal at the hands of... But Superman cuts him off. He's like, my parents are dead. Smallville is not if I can help it. Override all existing L protocols. You're Smallville's Kate now. I can take care of myself. So Sol's like, as you wish, fam. So that's what we jump back here to Lois's words, because she comes back and says, she's like, first thing Lazarus did was blow up the phone towers and jam the internet. By the time that the Peacemakers parachuted onto the Jayhawker community baseball field, blockades had been established on every highway and hiking trail in and out of town. The prairie would soon be mined for miles in every direction, the Arkansas River by Reaper drones. And Lois did make mention that around here, that's pronounced Arkansas, which I'm probably still saying wrong, not Arkansas, so my bad, y'all. And she mentions how they're pretty insistent on that. But as we continue to see Lazarus here continue their devastation, Lois lets us know that cornfields, cattle ranches, and the crop dusters at the municipal airport were carpet bombed into oblivion by Lazarus fighter jets. By midday, power had been cut to all of Smallville and its surrounding farms. And we do get a glimpse here at the Smallville Senior Living Facility, which is where Martha is supposed to be, right? So at some point in time, we know that she's going to be playing some sort of part later on. But the words continue on by saying that this was more than just a battle. The world's most powerful corporation with a market cap of $4 trillion was laying siege to a rural community of barely 20,000 people. This was war, and it had only begun, as we see Superman come in here and take out these fighter jets. So we're showing here that we jump back to the present time, where we see Lois and Jimmy at the Smallville Public Broadcasting Building here, where we now learn that Lois, this entire time that we've been seeing this narration, that this was in fact her making an attempt to broadcast this to the entire country. And she continues on by saying that they've built a concentration camp in the middle of the heartland where they're illegally detaining citizens without cause or due process, and no one seems to have noticed or bothered to care. The Lazarus Corporation, as directed by its CEO Ra's al Ghul, is applying the full force of its resources towards strangling this community. Smallville would have been wiped from Earth weeks ago if not for the efforts of one man. And it's here where we see that Jimmy Olsen is the one that is uploading the broadcast here of the pictures. As Lois continues on by saying they call him Superman. The things that he can do are impossible to believe unless you've seen them. We have. Every word of this packet is true and verifiable. These are reports and photographs from the world's most volatile war zone, right here in the Sunflower State. But then here, in the middle of this broadcast, Soul comes in and it's like, alert, Lazarus has detected our signal. Forces are approaching. But Lois, she got to finish off this message. She's like, if anyone can hear us, we need you to spread the word before it's too late. This is Radio Smallville broadcasting from occupied Kansas. Adestra, espera. So when her and Jimmy finally run out of the building, we see Lana waiting for them on the outside. And then here in this next moment, we see these big Lazarus mechs that are currently chasing them while they're on these horses. So Lois is calling out to Soul. He's like, hey, we got these peace mechs. Can you keep them off of our backs? And man, right here, this is actually really funny because the Soul is like, not without diverting vital resources from everywhere. I suggest that you ride faster. But Soul mentions that I have temporarily opened a passageway, but know that I must do what is necessary to protect the tunnels. So here we see where these mechs currently have them in the crosshairs. But then we're taken back here to the past in this little moment where Jimmy and Lois were preparing to launch the broadcast that we just seen. We see Lois, we see her typing away. We also do see Jimmy preparing the photography. Well, I should actually say photos that would have been on the live broadcast. But what this moment serves as here is really this retrospective from both of them, where they both kind of recall when they realized that they were both on the wrong side. Lois being a part of Lazarus and of course, Jimmy being a part of the Omega Men. Two sides of the same coin. And when we jump back here into the present time, we see now where one of the mechas fires a missile and knocks Lana off her horse. But while this is happening here, we are getting this narration still here from Lois to herself, where she's like, that the one thing that her and Jimmy have in common is that they've always had this nonsense that something was wrong, that everything was wrong. And as they both stay back here to go after Lana, she mentions how for years it was like an itch that they couldn't scratch or she couldn't scratch. Well, she said we couldn't scratch. And how this feeling that someone had taken the game board of our lives and shaken it like a madman until all the pieces went skittering into the wrong direction. There were plenty of times that we thought that we were crazy. Moments of despair when we figured we'd always be lost and miserable, always searching, when we wondered if we even wanted to go on. And then one day, out of the blue, everything changed. The day that she met Superman. And that's when she knew that she didn't have the first clue of who he was or where he was from, but somehow that she could tell if there was one right side in this leaky, sloshing, bleep bucket of a world, that it was his. And I damn sure had to be on it. So then what this does next right now is that they bring us to about 5 weeks ago, where we see Superman and pretty much everybody that they could possibly save here in Kansas. And we see here where Superman mentions that he takes him about a half mile down, below the old salt mines deeper than Lazarus munitions can reach, how he dug the tunnels himself, added some wells, and rigged limited electricity, which is, of course, solar powered, and lets them know that Soul, his guardian, a being made of living sunstone crystals, will serve as fortification and security for them. And he mentions to them how he knows mines from his time on Krypton, the planet where he's from. And while he's saying this, he can only think to himself, he's like, they stare at me like I have 3 heads, like I'm muttering gibberish when I speak more of their languages than they do. I have walked this planet in a way no human ever has, but I'll never be one of them. Lois Lane is different, scarier, the way she looks at me. From her, I can't seem to hide. But as Lois stops him, Soups is like, listen, Lazarus is at the treatment plant, attempted to poison Smallville's water. I got work to do, Lois. To which Lois is like, yeah, we both do. She lets him know that both her and Jimmy are working on a story. But the thing is that part of that story will have to also be about Soups. She mentions how he's been living in the shadows for years now. And after this, there'll be no more hiding. And she needs to know that he's ready for that. Are you prepared to show the world who you really are? To which Superman honestly just responds back. He's like, I don't know if I do, but then he gets cut off because there's a civilian that comes up to him and admits to Superman that, listen, when you were in Smallville with the Kents, I was the one who alerted Lazarus. And he mentions how he's like, yeah, his name is Jet Cochran, by the way. And he mentions, he's like, yeah, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought that you were an enemy to us, but here you are today. My family is safe because of you. so I just want to say thank you. So when he reaches out his hand, initially Superman just looks at him like, I just want to burn a hole through him. And recognizing that, Jed just kind of like walks off. And we do get to see Superman's inner thoughts here. He's like, tear his arm off, melt the skin from his bones, hurl him into the sun. But what Supes doesn't say is that he actually walks over to him and says, he's like, listen, you have a sharp eye, Jed. We need that. We could use you on guard duty. And then he puts his hands out to give him a handshake. And Superman is like fighting the urges here. He's like, don't crush his head, don't crush his head. But instead, he just says, he's like, these people are all your family now. Help me protect them. And as he gets ready to take off, he says to himself, he's like, this isn't my home. I have no home. I fight for strangers who fear me. And then he says this to Lois. He's like, tell people whatever you want, Lois. It doesn't matter. And as he says this to himself, he's like, I am nothing and no one. I am only here to bleed. All right, so now is where things begin to unravel a little bit, because we see here Talia talking to Ra's al Ghul. She's like, hey, you said that we had a plan to neutralize that cape of his. It doesn't look very neutralized to me. So Ra's is like, you gotta have patience, daughter. All will be ready soon. So then Talia shifts. She's like, okay, well, what about Brainiac? Where is he at? We need some more kryptonite. To which Ra's like, Brainiac is otherwise occupied, and I have my own plans for the remaining kryptonite. We'll have to employ other means of strengthening our army. And of course here, what Ra's al Ghul means is the God Box, or the Father Box, whichever one you want to call it. And it's here where we see the mecha and we see that box. As Ra says, it's time to let the hand of the Omega guide the way. So when we jump back to present time here, we see Supes getting rocked by one of those big mechs. As he mentions to himself, he's like, mechs keep getting stronger, infused with the power of Talia's mysterious Father Box. Behind every punch is a growling whisper that scorches my ears. Lazarus has been seeding storm clouds for weeks, smothering the sun. It forces raid Smallville in waves at all hours. Lazarus does not sleep, so neither do I. And that's when Superman lets out his power. And we see Krakoom as he lays waste to one of those mechs. And as he comes down from this battle, that's when we see Lois step over to him. As she mentions to him, she's like, you're exhausted. Anyone can see that. You're protecting an entire town day and night. Even a Superman has limits. To which he's like, has anyone heard them yet, Lois? Your broadcasts, your stories. Is anyone coming? To which she replies, she's like, I don't know. No, I guess not yet. To which Supes is like, then we'll both keep doing what we have to do, won't we? So Lois mentions, she's like, the world will know about Smallville no matter what it takes. They'll know about you. It's your story that will change everything. I believe that. I know it because it changed. But in that moment, she gets interrupted because something begins to happen to Soul. As Soul is crying out to Superman, Cal, something is wrong with me. And we begin to see Soul start to crack. So Superman's asking the question, Soul, what's happening? And Soul responds back, I've been infiltrated. I should have noticed. Cal, I'm so sorry. So then for a second, it looks like Soul basically just exploded. And you can see this like devastation here on Soup's face. And then we see a voice that comes in and says, Soul is gone, Superman. And it is indeed the voice of Brainiac. And then Brainiac continues to say, no more will you have him whining in your ear, holding you back. You're free now, thanks to Brainiac. Thanks to Brainiac. Thanks to Brainiac. Thanks to Brainiac. Man, this menace. So Lois in this panic, she's like, we have to get everyone out of the tunnels now. And Brainiac is like, nah, I think not, Miss Lane. So then Superman, not using his brain, is just like, get back, I'll smash it to pieces. But as he does that, he just gets engulfed. Because see, Soul ain't Soul no more. Soul is Brainiac now. And it's here where Superman says to himself, this world will never trust me. I'll always be another. To these people, it doesn't matter what I tell them. While Lois says to herself, if he would just tell us who he is, stop hiding, people would be amazed. As she calls out, Kal-El. She continues, they'd see him for the hero that he is. As he says to himself, I've told them too much. Should never have mentioned Krypton. Should have stayed hidden. Smallville is suffering because I was careless, because I showed the world something I cared about. Never do that again. As Lois says to herself, what does he care about? Who is he? Does he even know? How do I help him to know? As he says, never again. So Taya comes in, seeing that they got the upper hand. She's like, hold on, y'all hold y'all fire. And Superman's continuing to have his doubts because he says to himself, he's like, this world needs a Superman more than anything, but that isn't me. And as they got it wrapped up, Ra's al Ghul comes in and it's like, our games are at an end, boy. The final judgment has come. Before this day is through, mark my words. And as this man is holding this big ol' kryptonite sword, he says, you will kneel before Ra's al Ghul in the blood of those you love and beg to be my son. All right, what an issue, guys. What did you guys think? Leave it down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to leave a like here on this video for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. Don't forget to check out our Keepin' It Comic website, a way for you to be able to keep in tune with what Keepin' It Comic is doing. Also, if you're looking for ways to continue to support what we do here at Keepin' It Comic, consider becoming a channel member, or you can join us on Patreon or on our Keepin' It Comic website. We appreciate you always, and thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye.